Hey guys, it's been a while. What do we have here? Another front inner axle seal job. So, just to get you up to speed, I pulled this off. There's actually, let's back up. I pulled the caliper off. So there's the caliper. Now, take a look at these. I don't know what's going on here with these brake pads. It almost looks like some brake fluid leaked on the backing plates. And then, if you're not aware, brake fluid does not like, or I should say, painted surfaces do not like brake fluid. To me, it looks like maybe there was some brake fluid there on those backing plates. It's hard to say. Anyways, we'll get to that later. So the caliper comes off. Then the locking mechanism comes off. Then there's a snap ring that needs to be removed before this can be pulled off. And before this can be pulled off, there are these acorn nuts, lock washers, and then these cone washers. Once that's all off, then this whole hub assembly comes off. These are the wheel bearings. This is the rotor. There is some grease on this rotor. Interestingly enough, if you see inside there, it looks like there's hardly any grease. So this is going to have to be taken apart, cleaned, and the hubs are going to have to get repacked with grease. And this is actually part of a regular service you're supposed to do. I can't remember the amount of miles offhand. And now we're back over here. So what's going to happen next? This is a dust shield here. You can see this is junk. We'll be putting a new one of these on. So this is going to come off. And then this is the spindle that the bearings ride on. That's going to come off. And this inner part right here, oh, you can't see it because of my finger. This part right here is where the seal rides, which is on the other side of this. I'll show you that later. Anyways, once this comes off, these bolts come off, this seal's gonna come off, the spindle's gonna pop off, and then we'll see inside. We'll be able to see all the grease. Then we'll pull the drive shaft out, and then we're gonna pull these nuts off on the top and take them off on the bottom. You can see our issue here, the oil starting to migrate past the seal. And then we'll be able to, then we have to pull the wiper set off the back here, which looks like this. There's a bunch of 10 mil bolts there. And then the whole knuckle will come off. And then we pull. And then it's just lots of grease that we have to clean up. Lots of cleaning, lots of mess. And then we'll check out the knuckle bearings and see if we have to replace those, which we probably will because I have the Sumo Gear kit. And then we'll put it all back together. Okay, so we got the spindle off, and oh my gosh, I've never seen this before. Look at, there should be grease everywhere around that burr field, all in the knuckle. There's nothing. It's all washed out. There's some rust in there too. Maybe this thing went through some deep water at some point, but we're going to pull this out and inspect everything, and hopefully everything's fine, and then pack it with new grease. So let's get to it. Got it all stripped down. You can see all the rust in there. That's why you shouldn't be doing deep water crossings unless you're gonna pull everything apart regularly and clean it all up. Interesting thing to note is the top of the oil seal there. It looks like it has like a little nick in it or something. It could be from when the drive shaft came out, but I was careful, so I don't know. Who knows? Anyways, we're going to pop that seal out and put a new one in. So just as I suspected, these calipers are leaking brake fluid like nobody's business. Check this out. I'll just stick my little pick in here. There's no pressure on the brakes right now. You see that brake fluid coming out of there? Yeah, these are toast. So. John here. So I thought I should film another video because I'm terrible at filming videos. Of course, the work's all done now, but that doesn't matter. So this truck was brought to me in order to do the front axle seals. They were leaking pretty good. So this is an example of a job that snowballs. And this happens very often. And it usually happens because of one, lack of maintenance, and two, previous owners doing hodgepodge work. And this is one of those instances. The owner of this truck, he didn't do the hodgepodge work, but the previous owner did the hodgepodge work. Anyways, so did the front inner axle seals, and then I found out that the caliper on the passenger side, the seals were leaking. The rotor was actually covered with brake fluid. The pads were saturated with brake fluid. So then I put new calipers on. And then the other part of this job was also to install shocks that the customer purchased. He purchased Old Man Emu. The rears went on, no issue. The length was fine. Went to put the fronts on. Somebody modified the front suspension. They did the kind of, I can't remember what you call this, but they extended the frame here, and then the back has extended shackles. So there was ranchos on here originally, so I ended up ordering another set of ranchos. Cameraman almost fell over, but it's okay. He's okay now.
I'm still alive.
So it turned into me having to get different shocks, and then I had to make some spacers for the lower shock mount bushing because it wasn't the right width. And then the customer wanted his locking hubs to look good. And I happened to have a set that I had refurbished. And he also wants new hardware that hasn't arrived yet, so that was another thing. And once I got the front axle all done, let's just back up to the shocks for a second. So with the shock, I noticed that the front outer brake line, the hard line, was rubbing on the shock, which is something you don't want. So then I had to fabricate a new brake line. The other thing was the clutch master was leaking from the seal on the inside of the truck. So I had to put a new clutch master in, and the clutch fluid, brake fluid, was horribly dirty. It was literally as dark as molasses. I'll throw a photo in there in this video so you can see it. So we got a new clutch master in, and then I had to install a new clutch slave. And the clutch slave cylinder that was in the truck wasn't the correct one. Even though it bolted up, it wasn't the right one. There was no return spring on it. The clutch hose was wrong, so I couldn't actually just swap in a new clutch slave. I had to get a new clutch hose, so that had to be done. And then I noticed a gear oil coming out of the rear of the transfer case, the rear output shaft seal, or the rear output seal on the transfer case where the rear drive shaft bolts to, that was leaking. So that had to be done. And then the park brake wasn't working and he wanted that dealt with. So turns out the button on the handbrake was missing. And then the two little cables inside the drums were both broken. So I had to replace those. I think that's about it. Oh, and then the oil pressure, his oil pressure gauge wasn't working, so he wanted that addressed. So I ended up pulling the gauge cluster out, removing the oil pressure gauge, and then tweaking the spring in there. I don't know if somebody had grounded it at some point and it kind of overheated and then the spring deformed. So I basically bent the spring back into position, and I did test his oil pressure with a mechanical oil pressure gauge to make sure the oil pressure was good. Before I messed with the gauge, I put a different oil sending unit on the engine, and that actually made a difference too. So between the oil pressure sending unit on the engine and the oil pressure gauge, those two things had to be done to get the oil pressure needle working properly. So that got taken care of. And take a look at that nice decal on the valve cover. He was missing the 3B decal, so just out of generosity, I gave him a nice new 3B decal. And his clutch pedal pad was also falling apart, so I threw a new one of those on as another gift. I think that about covers it. I'll just take you underneath the truck for a second. So I'm gonna take over as cameraman now. Try not to get too filthy here. Also, the front brake line was not secure. So you see this clamp here, and there's another clamp up here. I added those because the front brake line was flopping around. And then here is the new brake line I fabricated with a new clamp. You can see the new calipers. And then the front axle seal knuckle all done. And then there's the spacers I had to put on the lower shock mount. And underneath the, this was leaking here, so that's nice and dry now. He also had one of these grease fittings was broken. So I removed it and put another grease fitting in on the front drive shaft. And there's the rear shocks. Oh, and we also installed a new steering stabilizer, Old Man Emu, at the front. And of course, there are new ASIN brake pads in the calipers now. I also redid the turbo drain line here. It was horrible. There was several fittings, 4 hose clamps, nothing I would be confident driving down the highway with. Maybe if you don't mind grabbing the light for me there, so we can get a better look at that. But yeah, there's a lot of kind of things in here I don't like that I would address, but it works, so we're just gonna leave it. But yeah, so there's the new turbo drain line I made. Anyways, so I'll hand it back to the cameraman here.
The whistle is for exemplary work.
A couple other things here I forgot to mention. I did flush the brake system, so we've got some nice, clean, clear brake fluid here. And if you look down, right down there where that little clip is on the clutch line, that was also missing, so I installed that as well. And a couple other things I did on this truck were I changed the rear diff oil. The front diff oil, of course, got drained for the front axle job. And I put new GL4 gear oil in the transmission and the transfer case. I used the Redline MT90. And of course, greased all the grease fittings on the entire truck. Okay, here it is. Taking it for a drive. 425,000 kilometers. Really, if these things are well maintained, it's barely broken in. Mine's got 600 and getting close to 610,000. Oh, see how the brakes work. Got a red light here. Pretty darn good. Oh, hey. Now, light's green. Head down the road here. It's always very important to road test a vehicle after it's been worked on. Make sure there's no issues, make sure the brakes work good, check for leaks, especially if you're trying to get rid of leaks. In my case, I replaced the front axle seals and the rear output shaft seal on the T-case, so we're going to want to inspect that. I did pressure wash everything after I replaced the seal, and I always do that on the jobs I work on. Clean things up, take it for a good road test, make sure there's no issues. Oil pressure gauge works really nice now. Not that these oil pressure gauges tell you what oil pressure you have, but they at least let you know you have some oil pressure. Anyways, so we'll just drive it a little bit longer here and make sure we don't have any issues and park it, check it one more time for leaks, and then the customer should be coming to pick it up on Wednesday. So that's about it on this truck, but just another example of somebody brings me a truck. Okay, we're just gonna do the front axle seals and put shocks on, but then I find a bunch of other issues that need to be dealt with. I can't send the customer home with a leaking clutch slave, a leaking clutch master, a brake line rubbing on a shock, saturated brake pads, calipers that are leaking like crazy. My reputation's on the line, and I can't send somebody home that they could potentially get in an accident or something. So it's unfortunate. These are things I run into. I'm happy to fix them, but unless the vehicle is maintained really well and it hasn't been modified in a bad way, then this is something that happens quite often. Anyways, if you found this video interesting at all, and you know anyone else that might enjoy it, please share it, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you like these videos. So drop some comments below. Let me know what kind of hodgepodge work you guys have run into. Hopefully you're not doing it yourselves. Anyways, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.